Greetings, this is Artie from Artifact Electronics. Today we're going to have a look at this Whitebox PC. I've had this for a couple of years, had completely forgotten about it. It was sitting in the garage surrounded by arcade parts, actually buried by a bunch of arcade parts. So the other day I was looking for something and I found this thing. And I was wondering why it was sitting in the garage, so I guess at that point it was time to bring it to the, put it on the bench, open it up, and see what sorts of parts we could reuse out of this. But I couldn't remember what I had done with this before, so plugged it in, gave it a keyboard, mouse, plugged it into the monitor, and started it up. And I hadn't even opened it. I heard the hard drive spin up, it started up, and loaded into Windows XP Pro. That was very nice, so I figured somebody gave this thing up and didn't even take the hard drive out of it. And once it booted into Windows, first thing it did was ask me for a password. So I couldn't figure out what the password was. I mean, I have a bunch of passwords, not a bunch, I use normal, just quick passwords when I work with a machine on the bench, and if I decided to use it later on permanently, obviously I go in and change security settings. But I tried all of those passwords. I tried mom, I tried password, I tried pretty much everything, and after 4 tries it locked me out, so I had to reboot it. And then I got more sophisticated and I tried mom 123, password 4, and Joe. And that didn't work either. So finally I remembered that that's the way I got the machine. The former owner, they left everything in there, but they also left it password protected. And I'm sure there are ways around it, but I really wasn't too interested in what was on there. So let's open it up and see what's inside. So we have a pretty standard ATX case. It's got a whopping 350 watt power supply made by Powerman, and just the normal complement of things you would expect. There's a DVD drive, a read-write drive, a 3.5-inch floppy high density, and an 80 gig IDE drive. And this pretty much has everything integrated on the motherboard. The video, the sound. It has one actual parallel port, 2 serial ports, and USB support coming out of these connectors over here. And it's got the PCI slots, an AGP slot, and a 16-bit slot down here. And you can see the collection of the peripherals mounted on the motherboard here. The processor under here is a 1.2 gig Intel Celeron. And am I obscuring this? I mean, if you look at it, that is a pretty small heatsink on there with a fan. But hey, it runs at 1.2 gigs. And has a memory bandwidth of 100 megs. Even though we'll look at it later on, it was kind of funny when I first booted it up, when it still had XP on it, it said that the front side bus was running at 100 megs, but then I went and reset a bunch of stuff in the BIOS, and when I rebooted it again, it said the front side was now running at 133 megahertz, and it worked just fine. So if anybody can enlighten me on that, because I read up on this processor, and it does state that the memory should be running at 100 megahertz. But it worked fine with the faster speed. Of course, the battery was dead. But other than that, there really wasn't a whole lot a whole lot to say about it. That there aren't a whole lot of parts in there. Oh yes, there were 2 expansion cards in there. An Ethernet card, an RTL 8139, and that's kind of weird because the onboard NIC is also an RTL 8139. So I don't know, maybe they use this as a front end, as a firewall in a web setup, and they just kind of, for convenience sakes, they used the same chip. Anyway, I took this out because the motherboard already has that on there and I don't need another network port on it. The second card in there was a VIA USB card with 4 external connectors and 1 internal connector. And again, there are 2 USB plugs there, USB 2 that is. So, well, I guess whoever had this needed a lot more USB ports than just 2. But I took those out, and then I sat down and decided, okay, what do I do with this thing? Do I really feel like going and hunting down? I mean, I have to put a new OS on it, which means I got to find all the drivers, especially, you know, since everything's on the motherboard. Where do I find those drivers from? And do I feel like it? But then I decided, hey, I wonder if this machine could be made into a vintage gaming machine, i.e., I install Windows 98 second edition on it, and then play all of those cool games that you can get for a song now. And I guess that's the hot thing to do now, is to build a vintage PC gaming machine. Oh, and yes, it does have 2 memory slots over here, and it's populated with 1 gig of RAM. It only has 2 slots, can't go beyond that, and 1 gig is the limit for Win98 SE anyway. I mean, also for Win95, but it gets a bit cranky if there's more than half a gig in there and you run certain DOS-based applications. It doesn't handle the memory management very well. Supposedly that was improved greatly in Win98 and subsequently in Win98 second edition, but I guess we'll find out how true that is. So, yes, we are going to try, or I tried to make a gaming machine out of it and putting 98 on it. Again, I wasn't planning on filming this beforehand. I did this over several evenings, but I will show you the results of what happened. And for the doubters, here's a purchase price. There's 2 more tags on the machine. Yes, I got it for $5. So let's see if that was $5 well spent or not. One of the main reasons that convinced me to keep the machine and try to make something useful out of it was there were 2 items inside the machine when I opened it. One was the original instruction manual that pretty much tell you what all the jumpers are, which is an absolute necessity when you're trying to build this thing up. But even better than that, there was also a CD in there that has, of course, the manual on it, but also has all of the onboard drivers for all of the onboard peripherals on it. So essentially this has everything, will prevent me from having to go on the net and going to virus-infested sites that purport to have all of the drivers ready to go, and all you download is just some other virus. So I had all of this stuff, so off we go, or went. So I dug out my Win98 SE disk, CD, and performed an install. It only took me 3 tries. The first try kind of went very smoothly because it didn't recognize, 98 didn't like the format on the hard drive, so it went ahead and repartitioned the whole thing and reformatted it, and everything seemed to go well until I started to install drivers from the driver CD. And I mean, it went ahead and used a lot of standard Windows drivers, but you know, the display looked horrible, the music sounded horrible, nothing worked really well. But the problem I ran into was, let's say I had the Win SE install CD in the drive, and it was reading from there. And then when I went in and told it to update the drivers and pointed it at the CD, of course I had to put the CD in, and it would read the INF files for the drivers, and then say put the Win CD back in again. And once I put the Windows CD back in again, it would get confused. It kept asking for it, and first I thought, yeah, okay, this thing can't deal with me swapping CDs while doing an install. So what I finally did was, I could boot into Windows. I just copied this whole thing over to the hard drive, and then when I did driver installs, I pointed it at the hard drive. That way I didn't have to take the Win install CD out of here, and if it needed something off of that, it could just go back and get it. Now, one tip is, it really wasn't Windows' fault, it was my fault, because it turns out that this drive, it's kind of slow. It takes it a pretty long time when you swap disk and put a new disk in. It takes it over a minute to actually recognize the disk and become ready. And I was impatient. I didn't wait long enough. I just hit return or enter a couple of times when it asked for another disk, and it kept crapping out saying I can't find that. So I figured, hey, Windows got confused, but in fact it didn't. It was just a matter of being patient and waiting long enough for whenever you swap the CD to be patient and wait for a minute or two, and then everything actually worked. All right, ready or not, here we go. And there you go. See how fast it boots. No solid state drives in here. And also I got it set up for a network password, which I probably have to remove, but one of the very pleasant surprises was that once I booted this up and plugged it into my network, and of course it could see my other machines. I have a mixture of Win 10, Win 7, and XP machines sitting on the network. And once I shared the drive on this, the rest of the network could see it. Of course, you know, security-wise it's a total disaster because I did this quickly and basically disabled all sorts of security to make this happen. But for now, got the machine up, yeah, and it would help if I use the right mouse to try to move the cursor, but there you go. We got a functional Win98 setup. And yeah, 1 gig of RAM, and it tells you what's going on here. Performance, I haven't looked at that. Win98 second edition, advanced system graphics, virtual memory. I don't want settings, I just want, oh, this is performance settings, this is not analysis. So anyway, we got a 32-bit system here. We got no exclamation marks on anything. Everything is recognized. See, the built-in adapter is the exact same one as the card. So I guess I could put that in, and you know, if I needed to make a firewall out of this. It's got 2 COM ports and a printer port. The sound card is a VIA. So basically everything, there's a lot of VIA stuff on here. So if we go to display adapters, it's also a VIA. I have to look up what it does, but hey, you know, it's good enough. It's on the 4:3 aspect ratio display. I haven't tried a regular wide display yet with it, but for this it should be good enough. The disk drive, yeah, I mean, here's your floppy and your hard drive, and the CD gets identified correctly, except that it's a slowpoke. Remember that. Don't make the same mistake I did and blame the OS and the time of day for it. You gotta wait. Some of the older, I mean, this is actually a rewritable DVD drive, but it just takes its own sweet time to recognize a CD. Floppy disk controller is on board, not even identified as what it is. The hard disk controller, everything's pretty much standard, but it's also via Busmaster here. Keyboard, monitors. It actually has identified my monitor correctly because it does that by actually querying the monitor. And I don't know if this monitor existed when this machine came out, but there is a sticker on the inside that says that this machine was purchased in June of 2008, I think. But the monitor works fine. Let's see, network adapters, ports. Yeah, we looked at all of this. The USB adapters has a boatload of them. Not a boatload, I guess that's all it is, but it's also via tech. So as far as the resolution is concerned, it is basically in that 1024 by 768. And we can switch it to true color and apply that, and there it is. I think I'd probably leave it in high color because most of the applications that I'm going to run on here, games and stuff like that, only require high color, and you know, at least we don't incur the overhead of true color on that. And another test would be to, I guess it actually goes to 1600 by 1200. So let's see if we can apply that setting. Yes, resize my desktop. And yeah, it's running at 1600 by 1200. Kind of hard to read from a distance. If it was on a desk, I would probably leave it in this resolution. But generally, the monitor's far away from me, and so it switched back, and this is fine. So that gives you an overview of the machine. It works. It works just fine. It is network accessible. And probably what I'll do with this also is I'll put a low density 5 1/4 inch drive into it. I have another machine now that's set up that way with a Pentium 3 or 4 that I used to make discs for things like the Radio Shack TRS-80 and stuff, but I may migrate over to this machine, even though, I mean, I have to test it. There is a floppy disk test for the program that makes the floppies, and that basically tests this thing to make sure that the controller, the floppy controller, is capable of writing at all the different bit rates and making good disks. But that's for another video. And here's some more stuff that I picked up over the years that really prompted me to turn this machine into a Win98 gaming machine. The classic flight simulator. I haven't tried it yet. The combat flight simulator. And these are made for, let's see, Win95 and 98. This is made for 95, but it also runs on 98. And some other stuff. Let's see. Found this, which I used to play, Twinson's Odyssey. And this one didn't come in a box because this comes like with a Creative Labs. This was packed in with a Creative Labs sound card, and it is strictly prohibited to sell it on its own, but they did anyway. This disc was 50 cents. And I got a few others. You know, the one I couldn't wait to play, of course, was Riddle of the Sphinx, a 3 CD masterpiece. That is kind of like Myst, but it gives you a little more movement. Instead of just jumping from picture to picture, you can actually turn inside a room and stuff like that. The biggest disappointment was Take a Break Pinball. It doesn't run on 98. I mean, it installed, it went and tested the sound card and made good sounds, and then it died with a divide by zero error. And that usually implies that it's having a hard time managing memory. Which is interesting. I should probably pull one of the memory sticks and see if I try to run this with only 512 megs of memory, if it'll run. But let's run Twinson's Odyssey to see how beautiful it looks. And Twinson's Odyssey made me install DirectX. Some early version, but they used to pack it with their games, so it would install directly off of the game CD. Hello. Let's see if this auto starts or not. Oh, the light's blinking. Yep. So anyway, here you have it. I now have a Win98 gaming PC, and I've accumulated a few games. I mean, who can resist when you can buy game CDs for 50 cents? Can't be that bad, right? Well, this particular game I actually played 20 years ago. And the machine I played it on was much less capable than this machine. So, as you can see, it's not too bad.
twinson. Rush to the downtown pharmacy and find a cure for Dino Flower. He's just crashed in the garden and looks injured.
All right. I guess I gotta go now. No, I'm not going to play the game. I have less important things to do. But hey, it shows you that the $5 PC can be used to perform some sort of useful function. I mean, useful function is if I can actually make floppy disks on this. That would make it really, really useful. But just the fact that I can play on this thing and see if I can get Flight Simulator up and running on it. One of the reasons I'm not doing that right now is, you know, the installation is probably going to take a while. And second of all, I don't have a flight stick. So I'll be on the lookout for finding like some sort of a flight stick. And once I have that, then we can install the Flight Simulator and do some flight simulation. One final comment I have is about the processor. It's called a Celeron. The big question of the day is, what is a Celeron? And I had to look that up, and a Celeron is like the lowest ingredient in a celery stick. So a celery stick is made up of many, many Celerons. And that's fine, but why would they call a processor the base unit in a celery stick? So what I do, take the processor and stick it into a Bloody Mary. Anyway, with all of that said, thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and comment. And let me know if you want to see any more of this nonsense or not. And we'll see you next time.